welcome to the Cultural Relations series about cultural relations as a tool of diplomacy in international relations of the Institute for Cultural Relations Policy. The aim of this video lecture series is to explore cultural relations as a soft power instrument in foreign policy and to initiate discussions on the role of culture in international relations. The lectures focus on various theoretical and practical aspects of cultural relations, including various actors, institutions, approaches, recent trends, and future prospects. Cultural relations are more determining in international relations than ever. Culture has an emerging role in international relations, and the importance of this role is recognized by governments, institutions, and other key figures of the global political arena. This video lecture series helps to understand the background, the complex mechanisms, and also the opportunities of what culture as a tool can bring into international relations in a changing world. Today's invited speaker is Pedro Affonso Franco, International Consultant for Culture, Arts, and Creative Economy. He is Brazilian, a Berlin-based percussionist, consultant, and researcher working across the cultural, creative, and development sectors. He holds an MA in International Relations and Cultural Diplomacy by the Furtwangen University in Germany. Pedro works mainly in African, Latin American, and European contexts, offering systemic change facilitation, strategy, planning, research, evaluation, and training services. He is also an UNCTAD consultant working on the project Train for Trade 2 in Angola. As a researcher, Pedro is currently co-coordinating the research project Impacts of COVID-19 in the Brazilian Cultural and Creative Sectors, a partnership between UNESCO Brazil, the University of Sao Paulo, CECC, Forum of Brazilian State Secretaries of Culture as well. So with no further ado, we start now with the dialogue with Pedro Affonso Franco. And first of all, there seems to be a concern on human rights and cultural relations, more so with the Sustainable Development Agenda that has become even stronger for the cultural sector and professionals worldwide. How do you think cultural relations can play a role in human rights and sustainability in Latin America?
First of all, thank you very much, Christina. It's a great pleasure to be here exchanging with you. I really hope our viewers and listeners will enjoy this conversation. And about your question, going straight to your question, I do believe that international cultural relations has a great power around the sustainable development and as well as the human rights perspectives, because this is an area in which countries are naturally exchanging. And this can sound very basics, and it is very basics. In whatever relationship we have, the cultural element is present. And especially when you are talking about human rights, that has a lot to do with values, with our set of beliefs, our set of practices, our religions, our way of observing the world, and our way to relate to the world and to other people and peoples in the world. So naturally, the cultural perspective, the cultural aspects, it's embedded to the human rights approach. Therefore, I do think there is a understanding, I would say, between Latin America countries and European countries on a common set somehow of human rights, right? I do think that majorly speaking, these countries, although they are in different regions, they are sharing a common setting of values. And through that, I believe there is much more fluidity than fractions in this relationship. So examples, practical examples, women rights, that it's a problem still in Latin America, a deep, very deep and sad problem that we are still about to overcome, hopefully in a few years. We do share the same set of values. However, the practices are different, right? So you can see there are a couple of programs and actions from Europe, coming from mostly the European Unions through most from the European Union, sorry, through the European delegation, through the European Commission, or through the EUNIC clusters, or through even the European cultural institutes to work with this topic in Latin America. So you see this component very present in the programmatic commitment of Europe and European institutions towards Latin America. Another topic, LGBTQI rights. It's again a topic that it's more and more being included in cultural exchanges programs, in cultural actions that are financed from Europe to happen around Latin America. And I'm not only talk about Brazil, the country where I'm from, but programs that cover regions, especially when these programs are focusing on the regions, they naturally tend to encompass more than one country. And other topics such as indigenous rights. So all these social issues that we are still facing pretty much are tackled by this programmatic commitment. So you see, there is the common set of beliefs, the common set of values, but the practice is still different. And through culture, these European countries are trying to improve the conditions to certain marginalized groups that are still suffering in our continent. So I do think there is a clear relationship, not only in the theory, but also in practice.
Okay, yes, definitely. There seems to be this strong discourse related to human rights and democratic values in both of the regions. Uh, in a way, there your work has not only focused in Latin America, but as well the global South perspective, which seems to be increasingly present in dialogues regarding cultural relations. There has been historical power relations between global north counterparts in the global south. Nevertheless, as we were saying, regions such as Europe have debated this and have an interest in fair cultural collaboration and cooperation. How do you think, a bit as well, what you were talking about and how it looks in practice? How do you think this concept of fair collaboration comes about in practice?
It doesn't. Very, very simple. It doesn't come into practice because the discrepancies are giant. First of all, I mentioned in my previous answer a couple of European institutions that are constantly playing a role in international cultural relations. EUNIC, EUNIC clusters, European cultural institutes. Basically, every single EU country has its own cultural institute. European delegation that are active on the ground, that have, to a certain extent, flexibility to deal with this topic too, and other institutions such as universities, institutes, research institutes. So Europe has a much stronger, I would say, capacity to influence, right? So the apparatus per se, in terms of institutional arrangement, here it's much stronger. In addition to that, there is also the economic component that naturally plays a role when it comes to trading, who exercises power. Even though we are talking theoretically about soft power, the hard power also plays a role through economics and through even the military force. So how do you build a fair collaboration between the global south and global north in culture if in other aspects the relationship is very unfair? We luckily, talking about Latin America, have a cultural offer that it's well known and that's well consumed here in Europe through our music, through our soap operas, through our culinary, through our football. Sports play also an interesting role, especially coming from Brazil. So all these aspects are helpful in showing our countries. However, in Latin America, we don't still have such apparatus of institutions that share a common goal, that are working in an harmonized way based on the same agenda to create an impact here. Things takes place in a much more flexible and deorganized, non-planned way. They do take place, but in this way. We don't see programs from the Brazilian government. Brazil doesn't even have a cultural institute that represents Brazil abroad. Argentina doesn't, Colombia doesn't, Chile doesn't, Mexico doesn't. So you see, I'm talking about, in theory, the most powerful countries, economically speaking, in the continent that don't have such kind of institutes, right? And this plays a very, very negative role in the way we represent our cultures abroad, represent and present our cultures abroad. Approximately 3 years ago, 2.5 years ago, I have written an article provoking a reflection. That was my intention. And the title was, "Is there international cultural relations from here?" From here, I meant Latin America. And in this article, I analyzed exactly what I said before, the way we present ourselves. We still don't have it. We never had it. And this is not part of a conversation, especially now, taking into consideration the current political moment Latin America is living, full of discrepancies, full of disagreements between one country to another, because this is crucial. There is no way you want to portray a region if in your region you don't have a common approach. So if we are divided, it will probably going to be much harder to show ourselves. We don't have a block of countries that are active. We used to have UNASUR in the countries from South America that was somehow starting to deal with this topic of international cultural relations. We still have Mercosur in South America again, that doesn't touch this topic, And between the countries from the Caribbean and Central America, and including Mexico from North America, we don't share a common bloc that it's currently strong, that currently represent us. We have the Organization of American States, in which the United States plays the major role. We are there in the courtyard, just somehow sitting down, but not really presenting anything. And that's it. So the discrepancy between North and South, once the situation among ourselves it's not resolved, will keep probably the same, because it's going to be very hard for one single country or even two countries raise their voices and present themselves strongly in culture if in the other aspects they are not strong.
Yes, definitely. One of the things that has been presented in the debate about cultural relations and cooperation in Latin America is that, contrary to other regions such as Europe, there is a lack of regional cohesion. And of course, if you're not regionally integrated, then there's not that much you can export or portray in the outside, no? So these tensions of, even though we share a lot of things together, culturally and so on, historically, still there is that tension. And actually, what you were talking about, the concept of soft power, is the next question I wanted to ask you, which is basically that cultural relations and cultural diplomacy seem to be concerned about having culture be a tool for intercultural dialogue, either as a soft power tool or as a form of cooperation amongst nations, or both at the same time. There is specifically an interest in Brazil as a priority country for the EU strategy for cultural relations. How do you think the Brazilian cultural and creative industries, or overall the Brazilian cultural sector, can benefit from this?
I am usually someone who likes the non-interference um, from one country to another. I tend to respect quite a lot self-determination and all these kind of aspects, but there are obviously exemptions when it comes to matters of, for instance, violence or a clear incapacity of a country to control genocides and all these kind of things. And in Brazil right now, we are passing through a very difficult moment. I think we need to be very honest and clear about it. We are going through a very nebulous phase, not only because of the pandemic, but even before the pandemic starts. The political instability in the country is very high, and the cultural sector, as one of the most fragile sectors, even in good moments, not only in bad moments, but even in good moments, we have been always one of the most fragile, under financed sectors and so on. It's now at this point in a living a tragedy, because given the pandemic, the sector basically stopped. We had a program to finance the sector after a great lobby from the sector, and the federal government, which is declared, it's not Pedro that it's saying that, it's the president himself who said that, and all this his government, against culture, against arts expressions. And this government, through after this pressure, decided to finance, giving a small amount of money to cultural entrepreneurs, companies, and organizations. This money was unfortunately not enough, was a help, but it was not enough. So we don't see many means to be financed and therefore to survive, because there is no government support, government money, and there is no market. So the sources were stopped at the beginning of the pandemic and are still frozen. The sector doesn't know exactly when activities will restart. So now, the Pedro who a couple of years ago said, I don't want to see much interference from Europe in the Brazilian cultural sector because the Brazilian government needs to play its role, is saying, please, European cultural sector, help us, because our government will definitively be absent from this discussion. So I am in a situation that I'm asking actually and lobbying, advocating for this interference, because I believe without this support, we won't really be able to restart our activities. And it's a great opportunity you are giving me now during this interview to be talking about it, because I think we need to raise this point very clearly in order to ask for this help, ask for this support, either coming from the European governments through, again, the delegation, EUNI clusters, or even companies, associations, institutes. What kind of collaboration is this that takes place only in good moments? Is that a collaboration? Here it's the main point for me. How about helping and assisting and exchanging based on genuine intentions? Not only to take advantage, but to really help and assist. We are friends only in the good moments. How about the bad moments? Right? So I think there is room for more collaboration, for more assistance, for more programs. There are means through para-diplomatic tools this can be done. There are means through the private sector. There are means through education, universities to university, institutes to institute. So there are tools that can be applied for this assistance to reach us.
Yes, definitely. When talking about cultural relations, and one of the lines of research of the ICRP is the human rights perspective, it becomes crucial that between global south and global north partners, especially now in times of crisis with the COVID pandemic, that the concept of solidarity between cultural professionals is present in the discussion. So it's very interesting to hear this answer you gave to the question, and what you have to say about what you would think prior the pandemic and now, and with the current administration in Brazil, what is needed in the context. So definitely that precarity that already existed in cultural and creative sectors seems to be exacerbated now with the pandemic, and cultural relations and cooperation can be a tool for solidarity between cultural sectors from different regions. So in regards to the pandemic, my last question is basically, what do you think is the future of cultural relations in Latin America and the global South, in the necessary shifts that the pandemic kind of forces cultural sectors and cultural relations to do?
Again, to be very honest with you, I don't want to sound pessimistic about it, but if there is no change in terms of who is ruling our countries, I don't see any major change. It's a matter of really thinking about who are we voting in the next elections, in our presidential elections. Yeah? Remembering that in our region we are all ruled by presidents. So if we don't change that, we will not see very likely a change in the way our countries relate to each other. We see now that countries in our regions have somehow become, I wouldn't say enemies, but become rivals. Brazil having many issues with Argentina, Uruguay completely unhappy with the Mercosur, threatening to leave. We had a couple of weeks ago, last week, if I'm not wrong, a discussion in the Mercosur meeting in which the president of Argentina decided to, Argentina was hosting the meeting, decided to cut all the communication channels during the meeting. You see the Brazilian president undermining the power of Mercosur. You don't see UNASUR existing anymore. So I don't see a change. I really don't see a positive change taking place. I see this change perhaps taking place again if we change who is ruling us. However, culture, unfortunately, has never been a major point in our elections. We do not address culture as a relevant asset. We are in a world talking about creative economy, digitalization, innovation, intellectual slash property rights. And our countries are still discussing the export of commodities. And these are still the determinant factors in our elections. So Brazil is a country, another example, is a country that has the most part of the Amazon forest, and the forest is never a topic in a debate on TV. So you see, as long as we don't really pay attention in things we should pay attention, this topic of culture won't be really present directly there. However, I do think we can identify who are the leaders who can be considered somehow cultural friendly or friendly to the cultural sector. And currently, I don't see our leaders, and then I'm not only talking about Brazil, I'm talking about, for instance, Chile, Uruguay as well. Colombia, it's a very interesting case because the president used to work at the Inter-American Bank of Development, and in his role that there, he was one of the leaders creating this whole discourse about the economia naranja, orange economy, which addresses the creative economy quite a lot. But in practice, you don't see Colombia playing a role in the cultural sector when it comes to international cultural relations. So I really hope, and now I will be optimistic that the next elections, at least in Brazil, in October next year, 2022, will bring a change. Will bring a change, and I expect that to take place in other countries around Latin America as well. We need, no matter if the government is right, left, center, we need to have more unity. We need to have more unity. And unfortunately, unity has always sounded in Latin America exclusively as a left-wing thing. Culture has sounded, unfortunately, only as a left-wing thing. And it's not. It shouldn't be a government policy. It needs to be a state policy. No matter the political orientation of who is in power, the police must be there and must be practiced. So we are still learning, in the process of learning and understanding that culture needs to be there no matter who is in power. Till we don't reach this point again, I don't see any major change, unfortunately. But let's hope for the best.
Well, thank you very much for this fruitful discussion about cultural relations and specifically taking the perspective of Latin America and as well the concept of the global South. And there is a lot of challenges indeed that the Latin American region has and the specific countries that we talked about. And we could go on to talk about how cultural relations and cultural diplomacy plays or does not play yet a very strong role in our region and in a specific domestic policy context. So thank you very much for everybody for listening this dialogue about the Institute for Cultural Relations Policy, and we hope that you continue to see the video lecture series of the ICRP.
Thank you very much, Christina. Just a very final and brief comment. I do think that international cultural relations can be played by different actors. As I said before, our soap operas are produced, are consumed, our music, our culinary, and we need to believe in the power of civil society. We need to believe in the power of human relationships, even without the interference of governments. Obviously, governments can help, can potentialize these relationships to take place. But I do believe civil society plays a major role in international cultural relations. I divided theoretically what is cultural diplomacy / country branding and international cultural relations. So among our countries, I think there is a good relationship, a people-to-people relationship. Of course, there are prejudices to a certain extent, misunderstandings. However, majorly speaking, we are a region that has this fluid relationship. I think Brazilians very likely will like Mexicans and vice versa. We get along well with each other. And this is very powerful. This is very powerful. And naturally, this plays a very, very crucial role. We have seen cooperations, collaborations between countries in the cinema sector, in the music sector, but things could be a way better. And this is for what we are advocating for, things to be better. So thank you very much for this space, and I'm always open for further conversations, discussions, exchange of ideas. This is the way we mature our relationships.
Definitely, the more discussions and dialogues we have about cultural relations and having important actors such as yourself generating more conversations about cultural relations from the perspective of the global South, I think the more richer that the conversation becomes about this sort of exchanges beyond just power relations So this is very interesting. And thank you very much for taking the time to have this dialogue with the ICRP. And thank you very much, everybody who watches this video.